Hey guys, today we're going to talk about a very important topic with American history. We're going to talk about the founders' view of limited governments. Now, before we understand what's going on in the American continent, we need to see the background a little bit. So this all happens with the backdrop of what we call the absolutist era. Now, just as that name implies, a lot of the powers in Europe were really looking at putting their government towards an absolute power type of function from the top down. So you have really these leaders that had all the power that they could muster really under their command, which does some things. It does provide for forced unity. It tends to also bring in a strong military, which was also important. But what that also, of course, did is it provided for a lot of cases of really just an infringement upon liberties, and it takes away individual rights of people. And so there's a lot of injustices that occur in that kind of government. So that all is taking place in the European continent. And of course, you have the British that were part of that European continent. And then over here across the Atlantic Ocean, you have the British colonies. And so we even see some of that absolutist power trickle in towards the latter part of this American experiment under the British Empire, if you will. And so what we often see, what we can take away from this is really from an illustration of the importance of something we call the Constitution. Now, the Constitution is a shared document that is agreed upon by the American citizens, and it ultimately is to promote unity in one sense, which is what the absolutists were trying to do. But what it also does is it retains liberty, which is not what could be found among the absolutist rulers. I like to use this illustration to really drive this home a little bit. Let's say you're playing the game Monopoly, classic game, a lot of fun to play. Now, you are at your house and your family and your friends that come over, you might have your own house rules. Then you go to someone else's house to play the game and you run into some trouble. You come across this instance, let's use this example, you land on go. Now, for some people, they say, oh no, in their house rule, if you actually have to cross go. Others would say, no, if it's okay if you land on go. And some others might even have sort of an unusual house rule where you get $500 or something else. And so what ends up happening is you have these disagreements with other people. There can be accusations of people playing unfair. Well, one way to resolve this tension is to be able to have a shared document on which everyone plays by the same rules. So what you could do is you could go with, from the box, you could look straight at the, if you want to call it the founding document. Well, as it turns out, here are the literal instructions. If your move took you onto or past the go space, collect $200 from the bank. And so if you want to look at the instructions as like a constitution, everybody gets to play by the same rules. There can't be accusation of somebody being being treated unfairly, because everyone is being treated equally. Now, you can also have what we call constitutional amendments, where this kind of rule can be tweaked and changed, but ultimately it's a fair game for everyone that plays. Now, the reason why this is important is because it reminds us of a couple of governmental concepts. On the one hand, there's something called Rex Lex. That means the king is law. That's the absolutist focus. Let's flip that though. This is the American system of really what is Lex Rex, which is the law is king. And under this system, if you have a constitution or a rule book where everybody agrees, the law is ultimately king, not one person in authority. You don't have a game of Monopoly where one person is chosen to be the absolute ruler who decides all disagreements. No, you have the rule book that everybody gets to play by. And that's what a constitution does. And what that also does is it limits power from somebody who could be an authoritarian. Now, you're probably not an authoritarian in the game of Monopoly, but when it comes to the real life game, if you will, authoritarianism is something that we need to be careful of and watch for, because it can very easily happen in a country. It's why it's so important that we have these principles of limited government to be able to help our economy, help our livelihoods, and ultimately help our nation.